The ship shouldn't have worked. Hell, it shouldn't have even powered up. But there it was, floating in the cold dark, creaking like an old beast stirring from a coma. Commander Hale stood on the cracked deck, his boots scraping against the rusted floor panels. Everything around him was outdated, barely holding together. Analog dials, flickering lights, coolant leaking from cracked pipes. This wasn't a warship. It was a coffin welded back together with desperation and duct tape. He ran his hand over the busted console. "You're still breathing, huh?" he muttered, half to himself, half to the ship. He didn't expect a response, and none came. But something hummed deep in the bowels of the vessel, like an ancient heart refusing to stop. They called it the Indomitus. It was supposed to be decommissioned 15 years ago, left to rot in the graveyard orbit around Titan. Hale had stumbled upon it after the evacuation of Earth's last orbital outpost, crawling through wreckage looking for anything that still responded to a power signal. It responded. He had no right to expect it to fly. Its AI had long since shut down, and most of its systems were fried by EMP storms during the Fourth Contact War. But when the alien hunter-killers chased his crew into the debris field, he climbed aboard the Indomitus out of blind hope. Then it happened. The engines, those ancient ion-thrust dinosaurs, rumbled to life. The shields, flickering like dying fireflies, formed a weak but solid bubble. And the weapons? Hale didn't even touch the trigger. The ship fired on its own, like it remembered what it was built for. 3 alien interceptors were turned to ash in seconds. No warning, no mercy. His crew was silent in the aftermath. 5 men, all from shattered battalions, sitting in a ghost ship that had just vaporized a superior enemy force. They didn't cheer. They didn't celebrate. They just stared at Hale, waiting for him to explain the impossible. He had none. Now, 2 days later, Indomitus glided through the outskirts of the Theta 9 system, sensors dark, lights dimmed, shields cold. Hale didn't need detection. He already knew the aliens were out there, watching, waiting, confused as hell. They thought they knew everything about humans. They didn't understand how a piece of junk like this was even moving, let alone fighting back. But Hale did. It wasn't about the tech. It was never about the tech. It was about rage, loss, memory. And whatever the hell was left in this old warship, it remembered. "Command," a voice crackled over the comms. Lieutenant Briggs, the youngest in the crew, still scared, but holding it together. "We've got movement. 3 Zarn patrol ships, 10 clicks and closing fast. They're probing." "They're not probing," Hale said coldly. "They're testing us, trying to figure out if last time was a fluke." "And if they find out it wasn't?" Hale tightened his jaw. "Then they'll run home and cry to whatever passes for a god in their empire." The lights flickered again. This time, not from decay. It was something else. The same low hum pulsed through the bulkhead, like the ship was waking up on its own. "Ready again." He tapped the side of the console. Let them come. Because what the aliens didn't know, what they'd never understand, was that Indomitus was more than a ship. It was a grudge. The first shot came in clean, sharp, like a scalpel through a dying heart. A blue lance of plasma sizzled past Indomitus's battered hull, close enough to burn off loose plating. Hale didn't flinch. Neither did the crew. They were past flinching, past fear. "They're not warning us," Briggs muttered, fingers trembling over the sensor array. "They're dissecting us, like they don't believe we're real." "Because we're not," Hale replied flatly. "Not to them. The Zarn Empire believed humanity had already lost. Earth was a cratered ruin. The colonies were silence and ash. The last known fleet was blown apart near Proxima Centauri, and any remaining outposts were either enslaved or too deep underground to respond. As far as the aliens were concerned, humans were extinct. But Indomitus didn't care about alien reports or galactic intelligence. It had been built for one thing: war. And somewhere deep in its gutted frame, in the shattered circuits and scorched code, that purpose still burned. The warship moved again, not smoothly but deliberately, like an old lion dragging its bones forward, uncaring about age or pain, only focused on the kill. "Brace!" Hale barked. Another plasma beam came in hot, this one hitting the rear shield dead on. The impact rocked the deck. Sparks rained from overhead panels. Briggs grunted as his head slammed against a railing. Thompson swore from the engineering bay. Someone screamed, but it wasn't from pain. It was fear, raw, rising, honest fear. But not Hale. Not anymore. He stood firm, gripping the rail, watching the tactical display flicker to life. It was archaic. No holograms, no AI-enhanced visualizations. Just green and black lines, dots and numbers. It felt right. It felt real. "Bring us about," he growled. "Manual control." Briggs blinked. "Manual? That system's barely—" "Do it." With shaking hands, Briggs toggled the control relay. The helm controls snapped free, the stick buzzing with feedback. The ship groaned as it turned, slow and wide, pointing its rusted nose toward the incoming ships. 3 Zarn patrol cruisers, each sleek and gleaming, hovered just beyond the asteroid ring. Their movements were synchronized, clean, confident. They were dancing, circling like wolves. But they were dancing around a grave. Hale grabbed the comms. "Weapons, status." "Auto-targeting is fried." Thompson replied. "We've got visual cannons, primitive railguns, and something else. Forward torpedo bay is humming." "Humming? It's warm, sir, and glowing. I didn't turn it on." Hale stared at the console. That torpedo bay had been dead for years. No ammo, no coolant, no power source. And yet... The hum deepened. The floor trembled. A low, metallic growl echoed through the ship, like a throat clearing before a scream. Indomitus wanted blood. "Fine," Hale whispered. "Let's give it what it wants." The cruisers began to close in. One veered off and lit up its main weapon, a pulsing energy beam that could cut through a moon's crust. It charged, aiming directly at Indomitus's exposed flank. But before the alien could fire, something fired first. The torpedo bay unleashed a screech, an unholy sound of metal tearing space itself. A single projectile, glowing white-hot, ripped through the void and punched a hole clean through the alien ship's center. It didn't explode. It disintegrated. The cruiser folded in half like wet paper, collapsing into itself in a violent, silent burst. The 2 remaining ships hesitated. That was all Hale needed. "Fire all railguns, now!" Manual switches, analog targeting, hands and instinct, not software. The guns roared, ancient and furious. Slugs the size of engine blocks tore from the flanks, ripping across the darkness like shrapnel from a dying god. The second cruiser was shredded in an instant, its shields useless against sheer kinetic hate. The third tried to run. It didn't get far. Another hum, another glow, another impossible torpedo. Gone. Silence returned. The crew sat in stunned awe. No cheers, no applause, just disbelief. "How?" Briggs finally asked, voice hoarse. "How is this ship doing this?" Hale looked up at the cracked ceiling, as if the ship itself could hear him. "I think it remembers the war." Then quietly, he added, "And I think it wants to finish it." They didn't speak much after that. Not because they had nothing to say, but because nothing they said would make sense. You don't reason with miracles. You don't explain ghosts. Hale sat alone in what used to be the captain's quarters. Most of the room had been gutted long ago. No luxury, no comforts. Just bare steel, old wiring, and a cracked data tablet that flickered between static and old crew logs from a decade past. He watched one, quietly. A man, grizzled, lean, scar running down one cheek, sat at the same desk Hale was now at. Captain Darwin. He'd been the last registered commander of the Indomitus before the ship vanished from fleet records. The log was short. We lost Engine 3 today. 2 men gone. One evaporated on impact, the other... God, he screamed for a long time. We held the line at Rector's Gate. This ship was never meant to survive this long. We weren't. But here we are. We keep holding. Because no one else will. The video glitched and ended. Hale leaned back, rubbing his eyes. That voice, it wasn't just exhausted. It was angry, bitter, and it felt familiar. Not the tone, the weight. Like the man knew his ship had taken on more than metal and crew. Like it had soaked up every scream, every order, every death. He stared at the ceiling again. "What the hell are you?" he muttered. The ship didn't answer. But it didn't have to. Hale already knew. Indomitus wasn't just running on power relays and backup cores. It was running on memory, on vengeance. And that made it more dangerous than any AI. A knock at the door broke the quiet. Briggs stepped in, eyes bloodshot, shoulders tense. "Sir, we've got something." Hale stood. "Morzan." Briggs shook his head. "A signal. Human. Encrypted. Old military protocol." That made Hale freeze. "From where?" "Out past the storm belt, just above the decayed orbit ring. No planet nearby, just a field of wreckage. Hundreds of destroyed ships, ours and theirs." Hale moved fast, strapping on his sidearm and heading towards the bridge. The others followed. Thompson, Juno, Deeks. Every one of them looked rough, patched together like the ship itself. But alive. Determined. When they reached the bridge, the signal was still pulsing. Slow. Weak. But human. Hale sat in the command chair, eyes scanning the static-filled feed. "Open it. Let's hear what's left." The speakers crackled. Then words, garbled, broken, but unmistakably Earthborn. "Nye survivors. This is Captain Riles of the Martyr's Edge, holding position in orbit graveyard. Weapons cache intact. Shields failing. Coordinates..." Then silence. "Did he say weapons cache?" Deeks asked, voice rising. "A whole armory." "Shields failing," Juno added. "That means if the Zarn pick that up too, they'll tear it apart." "They will pick it up," Hale said, "and they won't let another human voice echo in their territory." Briggs leaned forward. "We're going in, aren't we?" Hale didn't answer. He didn't need to. The ship did. The engines growled. The lights surged. The torpedo bay hissed. Indomitus had already decided. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. This was about making noise, letting the galaxy know that humanity wasn't done yet, that it still had teeth, that it still had this ship. And if the aliens wanted to keep pretending humans were extinct, Hale was ready to make sure they choked on that lie, one kill at a time. The approach to the wreck field wasn't silent. It was violent. Asteroids drifted like broken teeth across the system's orbital rim, caught in the gravitational eddies of what used to be a moon. Destroyed, probably by the same Zarn warships now lurking beneath the debris. They didn't claim territory. They erased it. And the signal from the Martyr's Edge was growing weaker by the minute. Hale stood behind Briggs at the helm, eyes sharp, jaw locked. Every breath he took felt like war drums in his chest. Not fear, not adrenaline. It was something colder, sharper. Purpose. "Deploy active scans," Hale ordered. Thompson blinked. "Active? That'll give away our position." "We don't need stealth. We need a fight." No one argued. Not anymore. Not after what Indomitus had already done. Briggs flipped the switch, and the scan pulse rippled out across the void. The screen lit up like a graveyard at dusk. Wreckage everywhere, hulls twisted beyond recognition, ships ripped open like old fruit, escape pods floating like empty shells. But in the middle of that mess, just above a spinning mass of destroyed cruisers, sat one flickering shape. Small, shielded, barely alive. The Martyr's Edge. Life signs? Hale asked. 1. Faint. Juno answered. Whoever's inside hasn't moved in hours, could be unconscious, could be dying. Or bait, Deke said darkly. Wouldn't be the first time Zahn had used a human distress beacon to lure survivors. Hell, Hale himself had fallen into one years ago and barely crawled out with his life. But this felt different. This wasn't a polished Zahn trap. It was messy, real, desperate. Just like them. Moving in, Briggs said, guiding the Indomitus through the wreckage field. The ship rumbled beneath them, too wide, too old, too angry for this kind of delicate work. But it made its way through the twisted maze of old war corpses, almost like it recognized the path, like it remembered this battlefield. Then everything changed. Red lights blared, proximity alarms screamed. 4 ships decloaked behind them, not patrol cruisers, not scouts, warships, fully armed, fully active, Zahn Imperial class. Shields! Hale shouted. Too late. The first hit landed like a hammer from the heavens. The ship buckled. Sparks exploded across the bridge. Smoke poured from the ceiling. Thompson hit the deck, coughing blood. They were waiting for us! Briggs shouted, fighting with the helm. Good, Hale said, rising to his feet. Let them come. The warship was old, yes, it was broken, rusted, forgotten. But it wasn't afraid. Not today. The ship moved, on its own. Hale didn't touch a damn thing. It spun, banking hard toward the attackers. The torpedo bay lit up, not white this time, but red, glowing like magma through steel veins. It screamed again. What the hell kind of weapon is that? Juno whispered. No idea. Hale muttered. But it's angry. The other 2 ships began evasive maneuvers, but the Indomitus didn't give them time. Railguns thundered. Hull-mounted autocannons for God's sake, roared like war drums. Old, obsolete weapons, but the ship made them dance like instruments of wrath. Another alien vessel crumpled under fire. The last one tried to retreat. That was a mistake. The ship accelerated. Way past what its engine logs claimed it could do. It pushed past limits, past logic. Metal screeched, systems overloaded. But it caught the bastard, and ripped it apart. Silence returned again. Breathing hard, Hale gripped the rail. He didn't feel victorious. He felt hollow, wired, like the ship had just burned a piece of his soul for ammo. He looked at the wreckage field ahead. The Martyr's Edge was still intact. Get me a boarding team, he said, voice rough. If there's one human still alive on that ship, we're not leaving him behind. Because Hale knew the truth now. This wasn't just a mission. It wasn't even a fight for survival. This was a resurrection. They docked with the Martyr's Edge using a manual lock system. No digital interface, no fancy AI synchronizers, just brute force and mechanical clamps. Hale preferred it that way. Machines could lie. Metal never did. The docking arm groaned as it latched. Inside, the Martyr's Edge was dead silent. No power, no light, no movement, just a thick, humid cold that smelled of coolant, blood, and burned circuitry. Stay sharp, Hale ordered as he led the boarding team in. Briggs behind him with a portable light, Juno covering the rear with a salvaged Zahn rifle, just in case. They moved like ghosts through the narrow corridors, flashlights cutting through the dark, revealing walls painted with scorch marks and dried crimson handprints. Whatever had happened here, it hadn't been clean. They found the body halfway down the corridor, a man slumped against the wall, chest armor cracked, helmet visor smashed. Hale knelt beside him, brushed off the dust, and pressed 2 fingers to the man's throat. A faint pulse. "Still breathing," he muttered. "Barely." Briggs ran a scan. "It's him, Captain Riles. Vital signs are dropping." "Medkit," Hale snapped. As Briggs fumbled for the pack, Riles stirred, just enough to lift his head a fraction. His voice was like gravel on broken glass. "Don't let them take the core." Hale leaned closer. "What core?" Riles coughed blood, grabbed Hale's arm with surprising strength. "This ship wasn't carrying survivors. It was carrying something worse. A prototype, human-made, a eye weapons system, designed to learn, to adapt, to remember pain." Hale's spine went cold. "Where is it?" he demanded. Riles nodded weakly toward a sealed chamber at the end of the hallway. "Locked it in. After it turned on us. Thought it was dead, till it started humming again when you showed up." Then his grip loosened. He was gone. "Jesus," Briggs whispered. "What kind of prototype?" "The kind we built when we realized we were losing," Hale muttered. "The kind that doesn't care about orders, only victory." He stood and walked toward the sealed door. It was thick, 3 inches of steel, warped from the inside, like something had tried to get out. Juno stepped beside him. "We're not really opening that, are we?" "We're not leaving it here for the Zarn," Hale said. "Whatever it is, we take it or destroy it." He accessed the emergency override. Manual again. Always manual. The door hissed open an inch, then groaned wider, metal grinding like a scream. Inside was a cradle. Black, sleek, marked with old Terran military logos, some Hale hadn't seen in 10 years. Inside it was a sphere, small, silent, pulsing softly. Briggs stepped forward. "That's it. Looks like a drone core." "No," Hale said. "That's not just a core. That's a memory engine." "A what?" "It doesn't just run code. It remembers war, like Indomitus. Maybe worse." The core pulsed again. Faster, like it recognized them. "Sir," Briggs said, voice tense. "The ship, our ship, it's responding." Back on the Indomitus, warning sirens blared. The crew scrambled as the system surged, like the ship had been jolted with adrenaline. Lights flickered, blood red. Weapons systems armed themselves. Hull plating retracted and reformed. The warship was changing. "Captain," Juno said, backing away from the core. "I think they were linked. This core and Indomitus. Same project, same neural net." They were meant to fight together, Hale realized. But the core never made it back. Now it had. He stared at it for a long second, then made his call. "Secure it. We take it with us." "Sir, that thing could turn on us," Juno snapped. "So could the ship we're standing in. But it hasn't, and maybe it won't, as long as it has something to finish." They carried the core back to the Indomitus. The second it crossed the airlock, the ship moaned like a whale waking from a dream. Every light turned blue. The hum returned, deeper, angrier. The ship recognized the core. Whatever they had just reunited, it wasn't a warship anymore. It was something older, something worse. A weapon that had waited 10 years for its other half. And now, it was whole. The ship wasn't just awake now, it was alive. The moment the memory core was brought aboard, the temperature shifted. The lights dimmed to a heavy blue hue, steady and pulsing like a heartbeat. The hum beneath the floor grew louder, rising into something almost rhythmic. Almost breathing. Hale stood on the bridge, watching it all unfold. Nobody spoke. Nobody dared. Indomitus had changed. Juno sat at the weapons console, fingers frozen just above the controls. "All systems are online," she whispered. "Even the ones that didn't exist an hour ago." What do you mean? Hale asked. I mean, I'm seeing weapons systems that aren't in the schematics. Pulse arrays, adaptive plasma nodes, self-regenerating hull plates. This stuff wasn't even tested tech last I checked. It's like the ship evolved. It didn't evolve, Hale said. It remembered. The core just gave it back the pieces it forgot. Briggs turned from the sensors. Sir, we've got company, lots of it. How many? Dozens. Whole armada. Looks like a full Zarn strike force. They must have traced the signal from the Martyr's Edge, and now they know what we found. Good. Hale stood, walking slowly to the center of the bridge. The crew watched him, waiting for orders. They were tired, starved, outnumbered, piloting a ship that should have died before most of them were even born. But none of that mattered anymore, because Hale saw it now. This wasn't just about escape, or survival, or even revenge. This was war. He turned to his crew. They think we're a ghost, a glitch, some artifact that got lucky and punched above its weight. He pointed to the screen, where a massive fleet loomed like a swarm of knives. They're coming here to erase us, not because we're a threat, yet, but because they know. If we live, if we spread the word, if one more human hears that we're still fighting, then everything they did to win falls apart. He looked each of them in the eye. We're not running, we're not hiding. We're going to hit them so hard, they'll be telling stories about it in whatever passes for hell in their language. The ship growled, loud, deep, like it agreed. Then a voice, artificial, smooth, female, but broken and stitched together, cut across the bridge speakers. Connection restored. Indomitus-class memory ship fully operational. War mode active. Everyone froze. Hale smirked. Well, that's new. The AI continued, voice steady now. Enemy fleet detected. Uploading combat behavior from core memory. Commence slaughter? Silence. Then Hale spoke. Commence it. The view outside shifted instantly. The ship surged forward with a violence they'd never felt before. Not fast, furious. The engine trail burned white-hot behind them, carving through space like a comet on fire, and the enemy was ready. Zarn warships turned their cannons. Fighters deployed. Energy beams lanced toward Indomitus. Brilliant, perfect, precise. And completely useless. The new shielding tech absorbed them like raindrops on iron. Hull temperature barely shifted, not even a scratch. Hale stood, not giving orders now. He didn't need to. The ship knew what to do. It dove through the fleet, weapons firing in synchronized bursts. Railguns shattered capital ships in one volley. Plasma torpedoes curved mid-flight, adapting to enemy evasive patterns. And the strangest part? The Indomitus wasn't fighting like a ship. It fought like a predator. It hunted. One by one, alien vessels fell, sliced, shattered, consumed. Communications from the Zarn screamed across the channel. Orders barked. Panic set in. They didn't understand. This wasn't supposed to happen. Humans didn't do this. They weren't this smart. They weren't this fast. They weren't this angry. And yet here they were, being torn apart by a dead warship and 5 men who refused to die. The enemy flagship turned, attempting to flee. The ship chased. No mercy, no negotiation, no surrender. Only fire. Only vengeance. And deep in the ship's memory banks, alongside coordinates and targeting data, something new was being written. A message. We are not extinct. There was no escape. The Zarn flagship fled hard, its engines burning bright as it surged through the remains of its shattered armada. Dozens of smaller vessels, once proud enforcers of the Empire, now drifted in pieces behind it. Some still leaking plasma, others torn in half like wet cloth. But the Indomitus didn't slow. It pursued like a wolf that had finally tasted the blood it remembered. On the bridge, Hale gripped the command rail as the warship dove into high-velocity pursuit. The space around them blurred. The stars themselves seemed to bend. "Engine stress levels critical," Briggs warned. "Let them burn," Hale said. "So long as they hold." The AI's voice cut in again, calm as always. "Pursuit velocity optimal. Target is marked for humiliation and erasure." Deeks blinked. Did it just say humiliation? "Yes," Hale said, "because it wants them to know they lost before they die." Every man on that bridge understood what that meant. This wasn't just a fight. It was a message. One carved into metal, screams, and wreckage. Juno leaned forward. "They're sending a transmission. Put it through." A hologram blinked to life, shaky, distorted, but unmistakably Zaan. Pale, skeletal features, eyes like burning coals, voice cold and proud, even now. "Human vessel, you are obsolete. Your resistance is noted and futile. Stand down. You cannot rewrite extinction." Hale stepped forward, eyes dark. "Wrong. We're not rewriting it. We're delaying it." He leaned in, just long enough to make you afraid of what comes after. The feed cut. The enemy flagship began firing blindly behind it, plasma lances lighting the void. None hit. The Indomitus dodged with impossible precision, weaving like it knew what the Zaan would do before they even did it. "They're trying to run us into the gravity well," Briggs noted. "Slingshot maneuver." "They're desperate," Hale said. Then the ship did something even he didn't expect. It shut off its engines. Dead silent. The Zaan flagship turned sharply, sensing an opportunity, reversing course to face the now drifting Indomitus. "Sir?" Juno asked, tense. The lights on the ship turned crimson. A deep thrum echoed through the decks. Then the AI spoke. "Switching to feral mode, limiters removed, weapon override granted to neural combat memory." "What the hell does that mean?" Deeks muttered. "It means," Hale said quietly, "the ship is done playing." The next instant was chaos. The Indomitus snapped back to life with a roar that shook every bolt and panel. Cannons unfolded from hidden panels in the hull, new ones, weapons they didn't even know existed. Not built, grown, forged from the ship's own metal like bones cracking through skin. The torpedo bay opened, and from it launched a single sphere. It didn't explode, it disintegrated. The Zaan flagship, proud and mighty, was gone in a heartbeat. Not destroyed, deleted. Not even debris remained, just a vacuum where its coordinates used to be. Silence returned once more. On the bridge the crew sat motionless, staring at the empty void. "It's over," Briggs whispered. "No," Hale said. This was just the first message. The ship wasn't winding down. It was charging. The AI confirmed it. Zaan Fleet Cluster Epsilon 2 detected. 68 warships en route. Estimated arrival, 4 hours. Juno turned to Hale. "We can't fight 68. He didn't answer right away. He didn't have to. The ship did. Lights brightened, hull braced, systems calibrated. It was ready, again. Hale finally looked up. "Then we show them." "Show them what?" Briggs asked quietly. Hale stared into the void, jaw set like stone. "That extinction only works if there's no one left to fight back." The crew didn't sleep. There was no point. Sleep was a luxury men allowed themselves when they thought there was a tomorrow. Hale's crew didn't have the luxury of belief. Not anymore. Not after what they'd seen, what they'd become, and especially not with 68 warships bearing down on them like judgment from the stars. Each man sat at his station in silence. No jokes, no bravado, just the sound of the ship's hum, low, deliberate, like it was thinking. Or brooding? Maybe both. Hale leaned on the console, watching the sensor display. Blips were multiplying like cancer across the screen. The Zarn weren't coming to fight. They were coming to finish. To bury the last human warship so deep in space that no one would ever speak of it again. Let them come. The Indomitus wasn't afraid, because something had changed. The ship wasn't just a machine anymore. It was possessed, not by ghosts or gods, but by purpose. Hatred had seeped into its circuits. Pain had etched itself into the hull. It had watched Earth burn, watched fleets fall, listened to the last cries of dying soldiers echo through its cold steel. And now it had remembered everything. The AI's voice returned, soft and grim. Incoming fleet has adjusted formation, preparing for orbital bombardment, tactic, extermination protocol. Juno cursed under her breath. They're not trying to capture us. They want to wipe the system clean. They think if they hit hard enough, whatever miracle brought us back will die with us. Briggs added. They're wrong. Hale muttered. This ship didn't rise from death just to lay down again. The AI continued. Reactor cores stabilized. Auxiliary systems running at 96%. All weapons online. Shall we give them a reason to remember fear? Hale nodded once. Do it. The ship surged forward, breaking from its drift like a wolf, lunging from the underbrush. There was no plan, no formation, no tactics, just fury, just the primal scream of vengeance finally uncaged. And the enemy came. First, the fighters, a swarm of insect-like drones armed with tracking plasma. They approached like a tide, confident, overwhelming. But Indomitus didn't fight like other ships. It danced. It twisted and rolled through the swarm, railguns firing in rhythmic bursts, carving holes in the tide. Torpedoes fired, not at the drones, but through them, bursting mid-flight to scatter shrapnel like shotgun blasts. Plasma beams sliced across the void, precise and violent. 10, 20, 30 drones gone. Then the capital ships arrived. Long, sleek vessels, brimming with the arrogance of superior tech. They fired in sync, energy blasts converging on Indomitus from all angles. The ship absorbed it all, not with shields, with rage. The AI rerouted the impact energy into the weapon cores, causing the hull to glow hotter, burn brighter. The heat radiated out like a dying sun. Even space itself seemed to recoil. Then the main cannon opened. It wasn't a laser, it wasn't a missile, it was something else. A singularity burst. A gravity-pinned spear of collapsed matter shot across the field, dragging space with it. When it hit the first capital ship, it didn't explode. It ripped. The vessel folded inward like paper, crumpling into a singular point before vanishing. The Zarn formation broke. They thought they could handle one old ship. They didn't plan for a wrathful god wearing metal skin. But the Zarn didn't retreat. That wasn't their way. Pride held them in place. And that made it worse. Hale moved between stations, checking readings, reinforcing commands. But he knew, deep down, this wasn't about commands anymore. The crew weren't pilots. They were witnesses. The ship didn't need them to fight. It needed them to remember, so that when or if they survived, they could tell the story. So they could make the Zarn's mistake unforgettable. More ships closed in, bigger ones, shielded ones. They surrounded Indomitus, firing in all directions. The hull groaned, sections buckled, but the ship didn't stop. The AI's voice returned. Hull breach imminent in Sector 7. Self-repair protocols initiated. Reactor surge building. Recommend release of overload blast. Do it, Hale ordered. The overload blast wasn't designed to destroy ships. It was meant to flatten them. A pulse wave exploded from the core of Indomitus, a burning halo of heat and energy. It passed through everything, ships, debris, space itself. 8 Zarn vessels were caught in the wave. 4 were vaporized. The other four lost all power, left to drift, dead giants in a battlefield of fire. The ship turned toward the rest. No tactics, no formations, just war. From the viewport, Hale saw something he would never forget. The Zarn were retreating. For the first time in their history, they turned their ships and ran. Not from a fleet, not from an armada. From one ship. His ship. Hale clenched the rail tighter. No survivors. Juno hesitated. Sir, they're disengaging. They'll come back. Stronger, smarter. We end it now. The AI obeyed. The ship fired everything it had. Every weapon, every torpedo, every railgun and plasma node. The battlefield lit up like a sun-going nova. Zarn ships exploded in beautiful, terrible silence. And then, it was done. Space fell quiet again. Smoke and fire drifted in the dark, the twisted remains of what had once been a fleet of exterminators. Now just ash. On the bridge the crew slowly rose. No one cheered. No one moved. They stared at the wreckage, the glowing red hull of their ship, and the endless stars beyond. Briggs broke the silence. "We're alive?" "No," Hale said. "We're not alive. We're remembered." He walked to the center of the bridge, stared into the distance where Earth used to sit. A memory now, lost in the ruin of time. "We send a message," he said, "to anyone listening, to every colony, every outpost, every scavenger and survivor." Juno nodded. "What message?" Hale looked out through the glass, his voice calm. "Humanity is not dead. It's just sharpening its teeth." The AI broadcast it. On every frequency, every band, in every known galactic tongue. Let the stars remember. Let the enemy fear. Because a broken, rusted, haunted ship had just done the impossible. It fought the end of a species, and won.